Everybody, to the Rundown special double back-to-back academia partnering with manufacturing edition. I'm joined by my partner, Alan Ray. Alan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. It is good to be back in a workshop, even though it's not a workshop, it's a rundown. Yeah, it's exciting. And I'm super excited about really this rundown because it's going to be a learning opportunity for me.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I was just thinking how funny it is, how comfortable you've gotten on these live events with the camera and a microphone and talking to people you can't see. It's always an unnerving thing, but you're like coming out of your shell, bud. I think there's a future here for you. Well, hey, we've got a lot of guests today. Let's just talk real quick a little bit about the why we're doing this today. So for those that might be tuning in to Integrate Live for the very first time or watching this video later on after it's posted, Integrate Live is all about bringing together end users, integrators, and vendors that have a common goal of openness, transparency, fairness, and above all, understanding that we don't all have the answers. Humility, right? If we want to grow, if we want to level up our skills, if we want to be a better vendor or integrator or company, we need to reach outside of ourselves to improve. And so coming into July, we said, hey, what if instead of our traditional problem solving, finding a problem using technology to solve it, what if we talked about how we are getting better by partnering with others? And so we want to offer this special 2-episode edition that's going to focus on what happens when academia, higher education, reaches out to communities and reaches out to manufacturers, to organizations, and says, hey, what does it look like if we collaboratively work together to push technology forward for manufacturing? Who benefits? How do we go about doing this? What does it look like to start one of these projects? And so, Alan, surprise to you, we've got a whole lot of guests on here today that are doing just that, and some that have been doing just that for almost 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so here's what to expect today in the first episode. We're going to lay a foundation of 4 different programs, and those programs are the Digital Foundry at New Kensington, and that's a collaboration with the Penn State University in New Kensington, Pennsylvania. Sherry McCleary is with us. She's the executive director of the Digital Foundry. Hey, Sherry.
Good morning.
I'll come back to you in just a second. And then we're going to also look at the Deloitte Smart Factory at Wichita State. We have Pierre and we have Michael. Pierre's here representing Wichita State. Pierre's the director of R&D there. And we've got Michael. Michael's our Smart Factory leader. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you. I've got a friend in Chris Farnell from University of Arkansas NCREPT program. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Go Razorbacks.
That's right. Woo pig.
Woo pig silly. For those of you who don't know, Chris and I are only about 20 minutes geographically apart right now, which I cannot say the same for my buddy Alex Godby here, who's way over on the other side of the Atlantic, speaking the Queen's English, representing University of Sheffield AMRC. Alex, how are you?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Oh man, you always sound so much smarter than everybody else. From the beginning.
It's just facade.
Well, you've proven that you're a pretty smart fella, so I don't know if it is or not.
You say it with enough confidence, anybody will believe what you're saying, right?
Well, I've built a career on that, Alex.
Me too.
All right. Well, how about let's start with an overview of the programs, and we'll just kind of go in the same order that we introduced. And I would encourage everybody that's part of this, as another program, as someone else is talking about what they're doing, for this to actually be valuable, you're going to have to be the ones asking questions of each other. Like, hey, what was it like when you did this? Or what are some of the things that you've learned already? Because frankly, I don't know that Alan and I are qualified anywhere close to ask the right questions, but I know that each of you have gone through some recent growing pains, have gone through opening things, gone through what it looks like to do this. And so we really do want to get your feedback on this, okay? For those of you that are watching live, if you have any questions, obviously comment them in. We'd love to hear those and answer them as we go as well. And already a hello to those that have already started commenting. So thanks for joining us. Sherry, take it away. Tell us all about Digital Foundry and maybe what it is, and then let's talk about the why.
Okay, great. Happy to be here, and I really appreciate having a chance to tell you about the Digital Foundry. I'm guessing we're probably one of the youngest organizations on this call, and so I'm really looking forward to learning from some of the people on here who have a little more experience than we do. We just officially moved into our new facility on June 1st,
Wow.
so we're only about a month into it, but we've been having this plan in place for the last few years. But I think before going into where we're going, I did want to tell a little bit of the story about where we've been and kind of, why New Kensington. So we sit right outside of Pittsburgh, and while we are an initiative of Penn State, who sits a couple of hours drive away from us in the middle of Pennsylvania, we are in the heart of what is very much a classic Rust Belt community story. So if you want to go to the next slide, if it's okay to start talking a little bit about the history, or is it okay to start there?
Well, absolutely. And let's just add a little context to Rust Belt, right? So on the East Coast, that's a pretty good East Coast term in the US. On the East Coast, there was all this manufacturing during the, Second Industrial Revolution?
First and second, yeah.
First and second. And then all of a sudden, a lot of those factories shuttered. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. So New Kensington has a critical place in the history of the world, really, because it was the birthplace of the aluminum industry. This is where what started as the Pittsburgh Reduction Company became the Aluminum Company of America, and then Alcoa, the first aluminum company. The inventor of the process for converting aluminum to a cost-effective usable material, Charles Martin Hall, came here to start that first aluminum company. Prior to that, aluminum was more costly than gold because it was so difficult to extract from the ore. So when this young man, who was only in college at the time, he and his sister developed and patented the process for the extraction in their parents' woodshed in Ohio. And when he got this patent, he went to one of his professors and he's like, what do I do now? And they told him, well, you need two things to be successful. You need metallurgists and you need investors. And there's only one place to go right now, and that's Pittsburgh, where you'll find a lot of both. So when he came to Pittsburgh, he had this was kind of like the Silicon Valley of the kind of that late 1800s period was Pittsburgh. And the Mellon family, who you see in the lower corner here of my slide, the two of the Mellon brothers were one of the earliest banker families who were taking advantage of all of this growth and productivity that was happening at the time. And they decided to invest in young Charles Hall and help him start his business right here in New Kensington on the river. So as those things go, if you want to go to the next slide, as you said, there were a lot of these very productive and successful early industry businesses that not only brought with them the productivity of manufacturing, but the huge multiplication effect that we all know manufacturing still has today. That for every job created in manufacturing, there's many other jobs in the surrounding community created. And so New Kensington, as a result of its manufacturing roots, became also a commerce and cultural center with lots of businesses, thriving community, several theaters. And then, several decades later, in the 1970s, 80s, as a lot of those factories pulled out of here, the town collapsed and it became a place that people passed through as quickly as they could. They didn't stop. So now we are reinvesting in this community. Go to the next slide. In with none other than the Mellon Foundation that was founded by the family who originally invested in Charles Martin Hall to come here.
Wow.
They are our primary investors to build this brand new facility, and we are not on the local Penn State campus. There is a New Kensington campus here that so happens their campus was property donated to them by Alcoa back in the 1960s. So there's this whole kind of circle effect, and the Mellons are now investing, the Mellon Foundation, in this vision. And our vision is to improve lives and strengthen businesses through access to digital technologies through the Digital Foundry. And we are not on the campus. We're in the heart of this community. And as a result of what we are doing, as well as some other investors and developers in this town, that was a town that nobody wanted to even stop as they quickly passed through. During the pandemic, we had about 30 new businesses open on the two main streets in this town. Most of them, Main Street type of businesses. But we are really hoping, and I have a dream that we are not going to not only bring back the coffee shops and breweries and yoga studios and barbershops that have been coming in the last couple of years, but we're going to bring back more manufacturing and more importantly, keep those who are already here competitive, accessing the latest technology so they remain here, creating good family sustaining jobs for decades to come.
How has the community embraced your vision and what you're doing?
So the community's still trying to figure out a little bit about what exactly are you and what are you doing here. But we've gotten a lot of excitement. Just 2 weeks ago, this Friday, we held a public open house that coincided with kind of a street fair we do here called Fridays on Fifth, where they close down Fifth Avenue, bring in food trucks and live music. Usually a couple thousand people are coming to that. We opened our doors to the public that night. We had people waiting to get in, and we had hundreds of people coming through that evening. Everything from little toddlers who we had things set up for the kids to do with robotics to businesses and local employers who were coming through. We had live technology demonstrations. So it was a huge success. There's a lot of buzz and energy. Just as a great example, we've designed the building. You see the rendering there, some other photographs of it, but we designed the building intentionally to be very open to the street, lots of glass on the front. We wanted people to be able to see what we were doing, feel like they could come in. We get people pressing their nose against the window or coming in almost on a daily basis, like what the heck's going on in here?
That's a neat idea. That's a really neat idea to invite the passerby to have if nothing else, a mental ownership of.
Right. So I personally come out of over 30 years in industry. I worked for Alcoa for over 30 years and then for Kennametal. Got involved in this project because I really wanted to take the benefit of my years of technical experience, my networks, to invest in the local economy and in the next generation of engineers and leaders. So we are offering services around education, workforce training. You can see here a list of some of our capabilities and some of the things that we will be offering in this space. A lot of it through partnering with some technology partners. But when we talk about our services, it's in three areas. One is education and workforce training, and that includes everything from we're doing K through 12 activities with local school districts. In fact, right now, if it gets a little noisy, we have about 30 teenagers here in the building for a STEM summer camp for high schools. We have engaged our university students, have several interns working with us, and they will be having some of their classes here starting in the fall. But we're also doing a lot of workforce training. We've developed content for everything from entry level, people who are looking to get into this field, to all the way up to engineering level. We have 3 levels of curriculum already developed. We've started offering those actually before we even moved into the building. Held our first class on the day of our grand opening that evening. So it was a long day. And then in addition to that, we're doing a lot of kind of tech assistance for local manufacturers where they can come in, test drive technologies, learn about it. we can work with them on use cases and problem sets that they have. Our staff is entirely coming out of decades of experience of doing these things in industry. So we want to be very much about sharing our past successes and failures, learn from what we've done and what we didn't do so well, to help accelerate this kind of digital journey that so many companies are either already starting or trying to figure out where they start.
That's great, Sherry. That's great. And so how did the open house, or how did the, and there you are, and some of the rest of the team?
A couple of our team members. So you were asking about the open house?
Yeah, how did it go?
It went fantastic. We had, like I said, lots of people, lots of questions, a lot of fun. We want, one of the things we say is we want people to learn, we want people to understand how they can better leverage technology, but we always want to do it while we're having fun. So, we had a DJ there that night. Like I said, we had a lot of activities for kids. And we really want to be, when we talk about investing in the workforce, we want to be investing in the entire pipeline, from the young people that are still in elementary and high school, all the way through to those who are already experienced in the workforce. Because I think for us to be successful as a community, as a local economy, as local employers, we need to be investing in that kind of entire pipeline from start to finish, and really getting kids interested early in careers in this field. I personally love my experience and the career I built in manufacturing and engineering. Would do it all over in a heartbeat again. I think there's been a lot of misconceptions about what manufacturing is, particularly now when there's so much tech involved. So, we also have a mission of really trying to get people excited about being in these fields and the possibilities to the next generation.
That's really a neat thing to think on, and still so many of the middle school, early elementary school STEM programs are lacking the exposure to manufacturing, right? They're building really neat Lego robots. They're learning how to use code blocks. They're doing things that, of course, will be able to be applied into manufacturing, but are they getting exposure into what it looks like to apply those skills and those giftedness in industrial automation?
Right. So with some of the kids that we've had here with us recently, we started with them coming in Saturday mornings back in April, and we're giving them a little bit of exposure to different technologies: robotics, automation, AI, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, coding. And so they're doing a lot of those activities that are fun, but we also want it to be very connected to how does this translate to real world applications and problems. So each day that we had sessions, we brought in guest speakers from industry to talk about how they're actually using those technologies. We took them on tours of a couple of local manufacturing locations. One was a steel mill where they're highly automated. It's a tremendous facility just up the road from us. Wanted to show them that tech's even very prevalent in heavy industry like that. And then the other was on the other end of the spectrum, an organization that's doing very fine detail medical instrumentation. So we wanted them to see some of that in action. And now this week they're back for a full week here. That also includes every day we're bringing in role models from industry to talk to them about how they're using some of this stuff. Because the Lego robots are fun, and all of those kind of things, and you want to keep it fun and interesting, but they also need to understand how these things are applied and what that career path looks like if you want to do this. That you're going to have to make an investment to get there. So,
very good, very cool. I want to come back to you in just a second,
okay.
And thank you for the overview. So I think this is an example of where education has partnered with a local municipality and said, hey, how can we do something here to bring growth to the area and to give our students more training, more practice, as well as to broaden that education outside of just our student body, right? And educate young rising stars and even bring in manufacturers and educate them on what's available. Is that a fair summary of the
Yes,
model?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's both keeping the workforce healthy and competitive and the employers healthy and competitive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think we've got a similar model with University of Arkansas with the NCREPT. So I'm gonna pin that, Chris, because it is similar, and but I want to go to kind of a complete, what I would say, a contrasting model, right? And this is one of the things that I really was excited about talking about in this series is, so I want to look over at Michael at Deloitte and say, Michael, am I right in saying that the Smart Factory was a Deloitte initiative from the origination? It was this idea that Deloitte had?
It was, yeah. So we kind of started. I will say we came up with the idea, but the spark really came from Wichita State. I'll kind of explain that a little bit, probably give it to Pierre to maybe explain a little bit of how it came to. But even hearing some of the stuff that Sherry was talking about around talent and getting involved with students, a lot of that plays directly into what we're trying to solve for too. I think everybody's starting to see a massive gap coming in skilled labor that we're going to have to start addressing very quickly. And so there's a lot of people trying to play the long game and start that now. But just maybe as a little bit of a background, and Pierre, jump in when I say something incorrectly, but about 7 or 8 years ago, Wichita State actually had an 18-hole golf course right on campus. And the president at the time, John Bardeau, came up with the idea that, hey, what if we got rid of the golf course and used that real estate to partner with industry, to start attracting companies to come on campus to collaborate with students in academia. Luckily for me, I'm also an alumnus of Wichita State University, just happened to be in town on a Deloitte project and got a tour of what then was called the Experiential Engineering Building, now called the John Bardeau Center, as kind of a nod to the founder of this idea. And I recognized that they had a lot of laboratory space in the realm of Smart Factory and what was going on with Industry 4.0. So a colleague, Brian Barish, and I did the tour, and we thought to ourselves very quickly, like, man, it would be so great if we could bring our clients to show them the reverse engineering lab, the robotics lab, what's going on with additive manufacturing, because we thought it would be a much better spark for our clients to let them see, touch, smell, do, than it would be for us to try to explain, hey, what is virtual reality on a PowerPoint presentation? It just didn't quite have the same pop and sizzle. So we came up with the idea. We worked with Pierre and Pierre's team to get an agreement in place that would allow us to bring clients to Wichita State University just to kind of show them what the art of the possible was. And we realized very, very quickly that our vision was nowhere near as big as it should have been. So we started with basically a small conference room in the Bardeau Center. And now, as of last month, we have just opened a 60,000 square foot fully immersive manufacturing facility that I'll dive into to make it very big.
Before or after June 1st?
After June 7th, so 6 days younger than Sherry.
Sherry, you're already the senior amongst the group. Look at that.
Okay.
Hear anything that before I get into kind of like what is the Smart Factory, what we're doing? Any context that you could help me set from the university?
Yeah, maybe just a little more background, especially kind of piggybacking off of Sherry and the journey that she's starting with her great Digital Foundry. So really what Michael was explaining, this innovation campus that Dr. Bardeau had the vision for about 7, 8 years ago was really sparked by something that we've been doing at Wichita State for the better part of 4 decades, and at the National Institute for Aviation Research, or NIAR, which is working on real world problems, helping the industry solve their problems, and using students to do that. So we have a variety of labs in NIAR that we work on materials research, all the way up to full scale structural testing, wind tunnels, robotics and automation, a variety of other labs. And throughout the years, we've made a name for ourselves in solving real world problems. Over the years, that's turned into what we now call applied learning at Wichita State. So that's taking students, they're in the classroom, they're learning traditional, credentials, diplomas, but we're putting them to work in our labs or with our industry partners to get them real world, real life experience solving real problems, and oftentimes working directly with those companies. So speaking the language that the companies speak, using companies' business processes, and what we found through that is that makes them a much better worker once they graduate, because they graduate not only with their diploma, but they also graduate with a meaningful resume and experience. And our partners have found that greatly accelerates their transition into the workforce. So what Dr. Bardo saw was that model that had been there always with our School of Engineering, but he wanted to expand that to the whole university. So now we've got on our innovation campus, we've got our partner, great partner like Deloitte with the Smart Factory, and right across the street from them is a new business school going up. So we know, digital transformation, things like that, it takes more than just a bunch of really cool technology. It's changing business processes, changing organizational behaviors. They're just as challenging or even more challenging than the technology aspect. So he wanted to bring that whole ecosystem around that, and that includes the rest of the university, business school. We've got a law enforcement training center, our criminal justice departments there, and the whole university, and then bring that with the rest of the ecosystem. So, over that 6-7 year period now, we have several different big, Airbus, North American Engineering's on campus, NetApp opened right across the street from the Smart Factory a couple weeks after they had. So some really cool partners coming to campus. And of course, we're really, really excited about Deloitte. And then of course, they brought their whole ecosystem with them as well. So a bunch of wonderful partners, and a really great opportunity for that future workforce to really effectively address what we're all seeing as a projected skilled labor shortage.
I think the first time I realized the actual reach that Deloitte has available, Michael, like as far as just the size of the integration arm of Deloitte, I was in the Amsterdam airport, and I saw Deloitte advertising. I was like, "Oh, that's cool! Look at there. There's an integrator I know advertising in a major international airport." And then I kept walking through the airport and saw like 35 more huge Deloitte banners everywhere. And I thought, "Oh my goodness!" I had obviously this organization is much more powerful than I realized, and it's funny because then I started thinking over the next year. This is 5-6 years ago. Man, we keep seeing this gap in skill sets of graduating engineers being ready for manufacturing, ready to go into the workforce. This feels like a really good partnership with Wichita and Deloitte to produce rock stars, day one rock stars ready to go in this factory of the future, this smart factory.
It's funny you mentioned the former department chair of the School of Engineering at Wichita State said, "Look, we're trying to build a unicorn factory." Playing off of making sure the students are ready to come into the workforce. And, maybe kind of going back to some of the smart factory stuff, because that plays directly into kind of how I think we tee it up.
Yeah.
Maybe to kind of like simplify, if I think about like the 4 big things that we're trying to do at the smart factory, I might kind of go out of.
Yeah, you just tell me where you want
a little bit. Maybe slide.
Help if I start on slide 1, huh?
Yeah,
slide 9.
That's good. But I might have you slip down 3 more slides to get to the guiding beliefs.
Let's take a quick look for everybody to pause and just see the scale of what the smart factory looks like.
We'll do a little Quentin Tarantino. We'll start with the end. We'll come back.
I like it. All right. So you want me to go
to the guiding? Yeah, this was good. So this kind of lays out the 4 pillars in terms of like we think in terms of what is the smart factory and what we're trying to do. And if I were to synthesize these, I would think about them in terms of experience, research and development, community and philanthropy, and talent. And then if I kind of double click into each of those, what I mean by experience is we have now a fully immersive, fully functional production line that produces STEM education toys. We partner with a company called Elenco. They have a toy that is a snap circuit rover. And what we are building at the Smart Factory is a modification kit to that rover, fully packaged with curriculum that we then donate to middle schools and high schools. So far, we've donated to Wichita, Detroit, and Philadelphia, giving curriculum to STEM education educators to help inspire young students very early on to go into these types of professions. The nice thing is that gives us an actual product to build And now we can showcase things like machine learning, like AI. We can show vision systems. We can show data historians and how that can help move the data to connect all of this together. Additionally, it allows us to meet some of our sustainability and highlight how we can do this as sustainable. The building itself is on a net zero building. We have solar power as well as wind trees. For any of you that have been to Kansas, it's very windy. We're trying to harness some of that power to actually fuel the power at the Smart Factory. All of the plastic that we use to create our housing and our injection molder is recycled. And so we're really trying to connect sustainability, process, technology, and allow clients to come. And we've designed it in such a way that we can put folks to work with a cobot. We can have them run on a vision system. We can have them do a light guided pick, pack, and ship type activity to really showcase what are the cutting edge Industry 4.0 technologies that are here today and how could they plug into a brownfield facility. The reality is most of our clients aren't building hundreds of millions of dollars brand new facilities. They have 50 to 80-year-old facilities, and they're looking to see how can they augment current operations with some of this technology.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Is that no one has hardly anyone has the option just to start from scratch, right?
Right. And the RDA piece, which I'll kind of kick over to Pierre a little bit too. This is where academia comes in. A lot of times, consultants are working, doing their own research, spending a lot of time with the clients. It has been a little bit of a surge for us to have access to the faculty and staff at Wichita State University, especially in robotics and automation and some of the cutting edge technologies that we are now able to collaborate together. The big piece that I haven't even talked about yet that's very exciting about the Smart Factory, Jeff, and where you guys come in, is the ecosystem. 2 years ago, we did a study with the Manufacturers Alliance for Productivity and Innovation, MAPI. One of the big findings out of that was we don't think there is going to be a market leader in Smart Factory. What there is going to be is market leaders in a bunch of smaller markets: cloud, data, software, hardware, automation. So the trick for all of us that want to continue to be competitive is we're going to need to figure out how can we all work together. Maybe sometimes it's a little bit of competition, but unless we are able to integrate amongst ourselves so that our clients see whatever these innovations are is this almost like a end product, none of us are going to be as successful as we could be if we collaborate together. So the other piece is we have hosted in the Smart Factory collaborators that have office space, folks that have ties into the manufacturing line where everybody can come and see. Maybe they don't even come to see Deloitte. They come to see some of our other ecosystem collaborators and have conversations about what they bring to the table in the realm of Smart Factory.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the really exciting things is that someone can go get hands-on with technology that they're interested in learning about, see it actually in action to produce a widget or the STEM kit, and ultimately get completely immersed into the whole experience and really just kind of dream, right? Because listen, I've done business development my whole life. The hardest part of the job is attaching my vision and broadcasting my vision for what could be to the audience. And here is an example where they can walk the floor and they can see it happen. That's
absolutely. And to that point, we have kind of almost two flavors of the tours that we have. Sometimes our clients come in and maybe they're already experts in the field of innovation or Smart Factory, and they might have a very specific problem that we're trying to solve. So we begin the process 6 to 8 weeks in advance with some intake questions, and then we will tailor make the tour and experience for the client. So if you're trying to solve a specific problem, we'll hone in on that. We have a lot of clients that are just getting started on the journey. We can show them a little bit of everything, and then we'll go up. We have some professional facilitated conference rooms up in the Smart Factory where we bring in subject matter advisors to then lead a discussion on what is the art of the possible? What is your roadmap? What do you want to do? How do you prioritize these initiatives? And how can you get started on calculating the ROI? Because a lot of times we see individuals just think, hey, I need to automate for the sake of automation. We call that random acts of digital. And unless it ties to your real business strategy, you're not going to realize the value.
All right, we're going to go ahead and coin that phrase right now, random acts of digital. I love it. That's good.
It's just been trademarked.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think Deloitte probably has a trademark on that already.
So I have a question. I know that I don't know how this ties in, but my question is, Skunks Works, right? So not just a matter of taking the technology that is available today and figuring out how to get people to come and experience that technology and see how it could be applied to solve problems and so on and so forth. But do you have a roadmap or a vision for, and this comes from one of the companies I used to work for, one of our parent companies of that company, I won't say the name, had on, I want to say MIT's campus, a super secret Skunks Works division that they would take their top engineers and ship them over to this campus, and they would spend their time trying to develop new technology for the industry that we worked in. Are you guys playing in that space? Is that something that
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll kick over to Pierre very quickly and let him talk about some of the stuff that he's doing at NIAR. I would say probably the only difference between the example you gave with MIT and what we're doing with Wichita State is we're a little bit more public about it. We want to be very open. We want to attract the best talent. We want people to come in and participate. And so we are very open about what are some of the technologies we're investing in. If I may, I'll just round out the talent piece, and then I'll hand it over to Pierre. The fourth pillar, talent, we've already hit on this a lot. We're expecting a 30% skilled labor gap in the next 5 years that we need to bridge. And then, Jeff, this one's for you. In an unsanctioned study, we also found that there are two types of people in this space. There are those that can make sense out of incomplete data. Okay, Pierre, I think it's up for you. Or I'll come back to the, thank you. I'll come back and we'll give a tour of the Smart Factory maybe once you talk to the IR. And
y'all just got dad joked and you didn't even know it. I love it. Oh, Pierre, tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes super secret research and development.
And I'll start with my own joke. So you know what, Jeff, you know what a robot's favorite type of music is, right? No?
I don't.
Heavy metal.
Heavy metal. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Well done.
So to maybe to hit a little on Alan's question and to reinforce what's on the picture here. So, I mean, part of why Deloitte came here is to leverage what we already have in place on our innovation campus and what we have at NIAR. Michael spoke to that earlier, but what you're seeing on that floor, Wichita State's robotics and automation lab did a lot of that stuff. That robotic cell we worked on. There's a robot in there that's doing soldering. There's a bunch of AMRs in there delivering parts and taking parts away. There's another robot doing boxing and packaging. There's a lot of assistive automation, and Deloitte hired us to do a lot of that work with them. And that's how a lot of our labs are. We tend to work on applied solutions for folks, so we don't do much, fundamental research, basic science stuff in test tubes. We're looking to take technology, and maybe it's existing off-the-shelf technology that's been used in one industry, but then apply it in different new ways and novel ways to solve problems for other industries. So we've got a lot of companies moving onto campus to harness that and utilize the laboratories that we have to kind of look at that next, what's out there and what's new. And I named a bunch of the companies that are on the campus as well. So a lot of them are utilizing us as that incubator for the new technologies, as opposed to doing a bunch of investment themselves. Especially for when a lot of the stuff that we're doing is industrial scale. How do people get things done on their factory floors? And that's a lot of investment. So what we try to do, the niche we like to fill for companies, is bring in a lot of that big equipment, industrial scale cycle stuff, and let that be a laboratory where industry can come and play. Make it a big kids playground. They come and try out a vast variety of different technologies, different tools, different machinery, and then pick what makes sense for their production floor before they go and make those big investments. So we've found a very good niche in that type of space, and I think that's why companies like Deloitte and some of the other ones I named are coming to here to leverage that. And then, of course, once they get here and they learn about the applied learning and that talent pipeline and all the pieces fall together.
Very, very good. And the perfect segue, Pierre, the perfect segue, because when we talk, and I don't think Alan knew what he was doing when he asked this question. But when we talk about getting technology out of experimental stage in academia and getting technology advanced and ready for the manufacturing lines, that is really the sweet spot of one of our guests. Anybody know who it is? I'm
guessing Alex.
I'm going to go with Alex. Alex, come on off mute and let's just jump in real fast. Before we talk about the AMRC background and everything else, will you tell us about the MRL scale and what that means?
Sure. So this came out of, well, the technology readiness level, TRL scale, came out of, I think it was NASA in the 80s. And manufacturing have adopted it and tweaked it slightly, but the concept is largely still the same. And what it does is it's a scale which is used to assess the maturity of a technology for use within a manufacturing facility. Typically, not always, but typically, technology and research is cheap to prove out in a lab-based environment. But it becomes quite expensive to develop and de-risk it to a point where industry are prepared to adopt it. So historically, there's been a bit of a disconnect between the two worlds. I'm sure the rest of the guests on the on this will be very much aware of this. But it's our job at the AMRC to really try and bridge that gap. So we typically take low-level research. Perfectly timed, thank you. We typically take low-level research from the university, not always. This is kind of one of our hats. We take low-level research from the university and de-risk it. We prove it out, we break it, we make it more robust to a point where industry are prepared to adopt it.
Very, very cool. And this is the first time I really learned visiting. So I've had the pleasure of visiting University of Arkansas in Krept. I've had the pleasure of going to Sheffield to visit AMRC. I'm actually, Michael, Pierre, I'm headed your way second week of August. I'm bringing my CSO, that would be my chief SAS officer, who's my 13-year-old STEM daughter. I'm bringing her to Wichita with me so she can catch the vision of Smart Factory. And Sherry, next trip to Pennsylvania, I'm over at Digital Foundry for sure. But Alex, this was the first time in my visiting at AMRC, it was the first time that I ever personally recognized what you just described of that gap, that cost to prove technology, right? And the issue when manufacturers don't have the money, the time, or the talent, right, to throw at getting technology from this level 1, 2, 3 hardened and ready at a 7, 8, or 9. And it's interesting to me to think that the organization of AMRC proved its value and has been so successful because that's exactly what you're doing, right?
Exactly right. And it's not typically always linear either. So it's been mentioned before on here, translational research. So something that might be TRL 8 within an aerospace setting or an automotive setting might not be TRL 8 in the application of a different sector, so energy, medical. And that's kind of a lot of what we do. So we'll kind of cover the areas that we work in a moment. But there's a lot of that happening at the same time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, well, maybe at first I should say AMRC, right? It's a partnership with University of Sheffield, and AMRC is the Advanced Manufacturing Research Center, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so how's that balance between the university? What's that relationship look like? Are you on campus? Are you funded by the university? How's that work?
All good questions. The AMRC, we were originally, if you just flip to the next slide, it'll give you a little bit more context. So we've been around since around 2001. So we're 20 years old now. We've got around 500 active research staff. But it all was really born out of a partnership between the University of Sheffield over here in the UK and Boeing. And it was really to look at machining techniques for kind of gears. within aircraft. Typically now, so we are technically on paper a department within the Faculty of Engineering on paper. But if we flip to the next slide, I'm going a little bit faster.
Did you say 500 folks are part of AMRC now?
So there's around 800 staff, 500 active research staff. So we're
Wow.
Yeah. So in terms of the question was, are we based on campus? A little bit of history. So sorry if I bore you with this. I'll try my best to be quick.
Oh, you're fine.
But Sheffield as a region in the north of England has an international reputation for metallurgy and steel making. And the actual AMRC is built on the site of a former open cast mine, a mine called Orgreave. And Orgreave has quite a bit of historical significance within the UK because it was the site of what we call the Battle of Orgreave. It was quite a violent miners' strike in 1984, I think it was, 1983, 1984. There was around 6,000 police deployed, and there's around 100 arrests made. And after that, mining and the steel industry really started to leave kind of the Sheffield City region area, there's a lot of parallels to what Sherry was saying around quite a lot of highly skilled workers in an area where there's not that many jobs anymore. So if we move to the next slide, the site, so this image here is the same site as the previous slide. It was earmarked for redevelopment back in the early 2000s. And the AMRC, well, the University of Sheffield at the time, were the anchor tenant to this site, and with the idea that it would attract others to the region, other research centres and also manufacturers as well. And we actually bought the land for that building for £1. So it was a pretty good deal. If you fast forward to the next slide, so if you just notice that red circle, this is what that side of the site looks like today. So in 2008, we built our second building, and that cost us £200,000 per acre, the land. In 2012, 4 years later, we built Factory of the Future, which is the building on the right there. The nuclear AMRC we built in 2012, which is the one just above it.
Okay.
And that cost us £400,000 per acre. At which point we'd priced ourselves out of the land. We couldn't afford to live there anymore, or open new facilities. So when it came to kind of further expand, and this is the side that you went to, Jeff, when you came and saw us. Flip to the next slide. We purchased the what used to be the Sheffield City Airport site. So in the bottom right corner there, it may not be large enough, but you can see kind of the proximity between the two sites. So they're pretty much next to each other. And you can see probably in the bottom right-hand corner where the old runway was. So the idea is the university now owns this entire site, and we can control the land price of that.
So what I saw and was overwhelmed with the size and capacity actually is the smaller of the two facilities.
Yes, by quite a long way.
Yeah. That's great.
Hey, I'm a huge F1 fan. So
yes, it was.
What are you doing with McLaren?
So McLaren, if you just flip back to the previous slide, actually, it's probably worth mentioning the partners. So one of our kind of big success stories, I know we're going to touch on this next week in a bit more details, yeah. But so this is McLaren Automotive. This is the road car division. We're doing a lot of work with them around their composite tub manufacture, so the monocoque for the road cars. And if you notice there, we've got Rolls-Royce, McLaren, and then on the next slide there was Boeing. Those three facilities were their production facilities. They're not research facilities, but they were chosen by the respective companies for the proximity to the AMRC's research. So the Boeing facility there is the first manufacturing facility outside of the US, and they put it next to us in Sheffield. So that's something we're very, very proud about.
And can you talk to us a little bit about how the manufacturers and partners join with AMRC to help target certain technology advancement or development?
Yeah, so we do it on kind of multiple flanks, really. So a piece I wanted to touch on, which has kind of resonated throughout this this conversation. Again, sorry if you go back to the previous slide. I
Yeah.
promise this is the last time. In the bottom left corner there, you can see our training center. So this is a facility we opened quite a while ago now, 2014. And the idea behind the training center is to take students anywhere from kind of coming out of school after GCSEs, which is kind of 16, and they're trained in that facility alongside our partners and our research, and they can go all the way up to leaving that facility with a doctorate, with a PhD or an NHD. But what's really unique about it is every student in that facility is sponsored by one of our partner companies, whether it's Boeing or Airbus or a smaller SME in the region. And that partner company tailors the modules and the learning of that student to the skills gap and the skills that they require within their company. And they also foot the bill for that as well. So that engineer or that student leaving as an engineer will have targeted skills to fill a skills gap, a guaranteed job, and no student debt. And we've taken, as of this year, 1,700 students through that facility. So that's kind of one way how we kind of link in there and work with our partners. The kind of the second way, which is the rest of the building, is really around the research. So we operate financially. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, sorry. I know Chris has to drop at 11. Do you want to have him?
Oh, sorry, Chris. I wasn't aware that I had you on a hard stop at 11. Yeah, well, let's shift real quick, and I'll come back to you, Alex. Thank you, Alan, for bringing that up. Chris, sorry for.
Oh, no, it's okay. And if you wanted me to wait until next time to give a presentation, I can, or I can give the 5-minute overview before I jump off.
Yeah. I apologize, bud.
No problem.
No, absolutely. And is everyone else okay with going 5 or 10 minutes past the hour?
No problem.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
So Chris, you and I met through D. Brown Engineers out of Little Rock. They actually, so our Integrate Live audience knows Brown. They've been on before as guides and walked us through some solutions. And Dee said, "Hey, Jeff, you got to meet Chris. He and the team at U of A are doing some really cool stuff." And he tried to tell me about Encrypt. And, I because of me, I didn't quite understand exactly what the scale of this was. Tell us about the Encrypt program. Start us off there. What is going on at U of A?
Awesome. Well, I'll give a quick rundown. No pun intended. Basically, we're also not located on the proper UA campus, the main UA campus. It's about 1 mile to 2 miles away. And the reason was because we had such an increase in enrollment, so many more students needing access to student labs, undergraduate labs, that they moved all of the research labs, all the professors' research labs and big power labs and chemical labs and things like that to what they call the Engineering Research Center. And we also have a few different sites like that. But basically, they moved it all off campus, which has some perks. We have free parking, so you don't have to worry about that. But it also is kind of nice because it started up a Genesis program. So we have about 30 to 50 startup companies all throughout. So we're one building, one laboratory in this research park, which is 10, 15 acres, something along those lines. And but it's a great opportunity for all the researchers to get together and kind of collaborate and things like that, and also having that technology transfer out to startup companies and things of that nature. So that just kind of gives you an idea of kind of where we're located and some of our neighbors and things of that nature. And then kind of Encrypt, the National Center for Reliable Electric Power Transmission, it came to fruition. Doors opened October 31st of 2008, and it was in direct response to the 2003 Northeastern blackout. So you all might remember that, but in 2003, a comedy of errors, and the entire northeastern part of the U.S. and a large swath of Canada all suffered a major blackout. And, it was preventable, things of that nature.
Like lives were lost in that, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Billions of dollars of lost economic opportunity. I think tens to hundreds of lives lost due to the power outage. And it was all very preventable. And people started looking at like, okay, well, how can we make our grid more resilient? And so they, the professors all got together, put a proposal together for this test facility. And that's kind of where we start off. We start off, we're going to do power electronics testing. We're going to do figure out how we can take these next generation power electronics and make the grid more reliable. And we started forming, a lot of things with wide bandgap devices, silicon carbide, a lot of electric vehicles and things of that nature as well. And we started forming these centers. So we have multiple centers as part of that our institution serves. And one of them is grapes, another one's seeds, another one's poets. So we have great names for them. I don't know why they didn't give us a good name for INCREP, but they're all what they call industry university cooperative research centers, IUCRCs. And basically what that means is our research centers, our research funding, we have an industry advisory board put in place. And that industry advisory board kind of tells us, we go out there and talk to them twice a year and ask them, what problems are you seeing out there in industry in these different fields of power electronics, cybersecurity, industrial control systems, even transportation, things of that nature. What issues are you seeing? And they write up a document, their needs documents, the things that they want to see implemented in the future. And then all of our researchers take that needs document, take it back, and they try and develop proposals and such to meet the criteria of the needs documents. And then the industry advisory board actually gets to vote on which projects the researchers are funded on through these centers. So it's a really nice kind of feedback loop for our researchers and our students to work on real world problems. So there's just some pictures of the INCREP Bay. It's a 12,000 square foot facility, lots of huge power electronics, huge to us. I was talking to some folks that were down there in Houston, and they have 1.9 MVA generation sites all over the place. But large power, I believe it's the largest power at a university in the U.S. Currently, but lots of power, lots of industrial control systems in place, and lots of opportunities for our students and everything to do testing. So here are some of our students in the control room running through some electric vehicle testing, and it really gives them an opportunity. I know you all talked about this before, but you have students in the classroom learning a lot of these skills, but they might not know how to actually put those into practice. And so with this facility, we have our students come in and they actually run dynamometer load profiles. They wire up industrial control systems and see how they work, and they get some of that hands-on to couple with the theory that they learned in the classroom. And then we're also a user facility. So all those startup companies we talked about before, they can actually come and use our space. We have CNCs, we have additive and subtractive manufacturing capabilities, lots of test capabilities, and they can actually come over and use our lab instead of having, as a small startup company, having to put out that capital to build up their own lab space as well. So lots of great interactions there.
Aren't you guys doing something with the chips?
Oh, yes. Yes, we do. We're very vertically integrated at the U of A. So we have some of the work that we do is silicon carbide and gallium nitride research. We actually can fabricate our own chips. And then we have a large packaging group, which takes those bare die silicon devices, packages them into modules. And then our power electronics teams take those modules and build up, inverters or different power electronic subsystems. And then we have our another group of researchers that are very heavy into control algorithms and things like that. They can build up all the brains of the operation and test entire systems there. So we're down at the chip level all the way up to the control systems. And they're actually having another huge investment. I believe it's an $18 million silicon carbide fab, which is actually going right next door to us, right next door to INCREP, about 25 yards away. And they've gotten the budget funding for that. But it's to help kind of address a lot of these chip shortages and a lot of the offshoring that's happened in the past.
I've got tons of questions for you next week. I can tell you that right now.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. And apologies for the quick run through, but I know.
Well, yeah, that's on me, Chris. I didn't do a good job of time management there. But what we're going to hear from Chris and some of the students, right, next week is we're going to talk about some of the wins. And so just real quick, give us 30 seconds before you step out, if it's okay. What are some of the wins that the students are going to talk about next week?
Well, so we have a lot of REU students, research experience for undergrads, working with us over the summer. And we've been having them look at industrial control systems and supervisory control and data acquisition, ICS SCADA. I guess I don't need to define the acronyms for this crowd, right? but we're looking at it from a cybersecurity standpoint. And so they've been working with NetLab Plus, Ignition, and then trying to perform different attacks and mitigations for these. So they're going to go through and they've been developing real-time simulators of different systems, like, maybe a solar inverter or some kind of distributed energy resource, and they're going to show us how they can intercept packets, perform man-in-the-middle attacks, and other cyber attacks, things like that, in a truncated 5 to 10 minute demo.
Yeah, so next week is going to be 4 hours, right?
Oh God! I told them, I was like, shoot for 5 minutes, and that way, whenever you go,
I'm asking Jeff for 4 hours. Is what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
I like it. We'll just get Alan's questions in a second and a third video.
No, yeah.
But some of the other ones that we've had, just to kind of, we've had other students working on, are large electric vehicle manufacturers. We've actually done a lot of testing and studying for their drives and stuff, working with permanent magnet synchronous machines, building up the inverters, making them smaller and more efficient and more reliable, and also a lot of work with power electronics integration of the grid with solar energy, wind energy, and battery energy storage to try and utilize those renewable energies as much as possible. So
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to meeting the students next week. It'd be great to showcase their projects. And Chris, thanks so much for
Thanks, Chris.
going a little bit over. I appreciate you.
Thank you all so much. And sorry I have to leave, and I apologize for interrupting you there, Alex.
No
You'll get me back next week, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I will. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. You all have a great
Cheers,
day.
Alex.
You do it very politely, the way the British do it.
Hey, can we just go ahead and settle a debate that has been raging for the last 61 minutes internally for me? Sherry,
Is it aluminium or aluminum? Is it that? I wasn't going to bring it up because I'm outnumbered.
Sherry said something about making aluminum, and I wanted to make sure that Alex understood what
It's been ticking over in my mind. I was going to keep quiet. I'm going to lose that debate here, I think.
And I was over the years in the aluminium industry. We had several opportunities to work with the University of Sheffield with all of our work with some of your key companies there. So
Yeah, and
attest to some of the good work that you've been doing for a long time.
it's always funny how small the world is when we start getting into the industrial automation space. Because did you notice that one of the collaborative universities with Encrypt, it was MIT, it was University of Central Florida, it was a couple other Lehigh Valley, but it was also Carnegie Mellon as part of that program. We need to find out how some of our education or educator audiences, like looking at Jeff Rankin, who's on right now, how Penn College of Technology can get involved in these programs as well. But so there was a tie back with the U of A Encrypt to Carnegie Mellon. I heard Airbus from, I want to say, Pierre, was there a mention of a partnership with Airbus?
Yep,
Wichita State's got a deep aeronautics history. Is that correct?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And then now we look over at AMRC, and what are they doing? They're working with Boeing. They're working with Airbus.
McLaren.
McLaren flies, just on the track. We got it.
With Spirit Aerosystems, which is also here in Wichita, and we work with as well. So I've actually been to AMRC when I used to work for Spirit.
Great.
How fun.
Fantastic.
Isn't that crazy? So let's come back on at AMRC. Alex, what are we going to talk about next week when we define some of the wins? I think we've already said, hey, look, economically, look how this area has grown. And so New Kensington, look at the potential, right? Land was being given away, and now it's $400,000. Well, it's priced beyond probably $400,000 an acre just because of industry. What are some of the other wins we're going to talk about?
So we've got a few case studies, technical projects that we can look into, how we've helped our partners. Partnership and membership is something that I probably want to touch on briefly now, depending on time, just kind of how that model works for us. But we can move it to next week if there's not enough time. So yeah, economic, how we kind of help our partners, economic to the region, but also kind of the larger GDP and the partnership network as well.
Yeah, awesome. And Sherry, you mentioned grand opening. We've already had wins. You've got education classes going on. You've got people having to clean smudge marks off the glass on the sidewalks. We already are seeing positive change there. On the smart factory side, Michael, I heard about some cool robotics. I did not hear anything about the robotic barista.
We can talk about Cafe X and how we're going to serve your coffee when you come to visit us.
Yep.
Okay. Because Alan and I are coffee nerds. Like, we geek out we're chasing the perfect cup of pour over every single day.
Well, we have our own, we call it the Believers Blend. We've actually partnered with a local roastery in Wichita, and we've made our own coffee bean that we serve at the Smart Factory at the Cafe X, which is a robotic barista. So we own the entire supply chain of our coffee supply in the Smart Factory.
That's great. That's great. What type of wins have you seen early on with just interest from the community? You mentioned already sending STEM kits out to some Philadelphia, Detroit, and Wichita-based school systems. Anything else let's talk from the commercial side on the Deloitte side.
Yeah, the commercial side, we can talk about two kind of quick case studies. One, we won some new work with a client in a space that we never won before, just because we were able to articulate how we can bring our breadth of solutions, and they just weren't aware. Another case study we can dig into a little bit, if I can get permission to talk about it, maybe Pierre can help me. One of our clients and some of the stuff they're doing around factory automation, really pushing the envelope for Industry 4.0 technologies. Worst case, we'll just anonymize it, but we can actually talk about how some of this ecosystem is actually coming together to deliver real value in the marketplace for our clients.
Oh, that would be great. We'd love to hear and learn more about it. Alex, one of the things I'd love to next week, just because the visit is still so fresh in my mind. You guys were doing a really neat piece on modular cells, right? Being able to move cells around a factory without having to recalibrate based on, was it floor panels, a floor system?
Yeah, it was a few years ago now. The idea was, Factory 2050, which was the kind of circular round glass building, which just a really quick tangent. Sherry, you mentioned about the fingerprints on the glass. One of our KPIs for measuring the success of the building was how many fingerprints there were on the glass on the outside. So funny how we're aligned there. The idea behind Factory 2050 really was to be the world's first factory dedicated to looking at reconfigurable manufacturing. So as we kind of drive towards a more batch size of one and mass customization, the idea was really to answer the question, rather than building a factory to build a widget, a part, an assembly, whatever it may be, can we build a factory that we then rent to build whatever we want to make? So there was a piece of work, which I think is what you're referring to, Jeff, around we have a modular flooring system with kind of safety and utilities set up, and we can rapidly reconfigure that, which was originally the output of that project was around the learnings from that. But now we use it operationally as well for kind of SMEs, smaller companies to come in. We can really quickly create a replica of their production line in a number of hours, rather than typically it would take us kind of weeks to set up a cell and drill the floor and set up safety, etc. So yeah, we can absolutely dive into that next week if that's something you'd be interested in.
I thought it was really neat, and something I think maybe Pierre will be able to thumbs up on. I can also remember you mentioned the holy grail of aeronautics or manufacturing in that space is to be able to drill 2-inch holes in titanium. Is that right?
So there's quite a lot. Yeah, there's quite a lot of work going on around in a kind of novel machining. Well, we've got a research team looking at novel machining, and they're looking at things like multiple stack drilling, one-shot drilling for assembly, mainly in aerospace. So PA, you'll have some kind of background in that space likely. But also, yeah, so drilling holes, 1-inch, 2-inch holes in titanium for engine pylons, for example, but doing it with a robot system rather than a CNC machine. So there's quite a lot of work going around kind of robotic machining and milling, which we've, I think goes back to full circle, making the mistakes so people don't have to make them. We've made plenty, but hopefully we've learned from them in the process.
It's really neat. Oh, it's, yeah. Alan,
before we get off the call, what I want to tie this to, because again, right, so I'm coming in from this from a different kind of aspect as a business owner of kind of a controls and automation company, also with me and Jeff and our partnership. But how do I help my clients that I work for understand the benefit and how they could get engaged with what you guys are doing, right? So tie this back to how do we get people like engaged with you guys so that we raise the level of talent and opportunity that you guys are there to do that. But how do I, as a business owner, help people I work with go, you really need to get engaged with, Digital Foundry and AMRC, and, how do we do that? What's the hook? What's the connection?
Sherry, you want to take
So, yes, I want to comment a little bit about our focus is we've talked a lot today about some of the opportunities with some really big players who already kind of get it. We've got the Boeings and the Airbuses and some of the big players, but our focus is really pretty not exclusively, but pretty strongly on small to medium manufacturers, which is where I think we have a lot of struggles on figuring out how to bring them along. And so to your question, Alan, I think it's, we've got to be very pragmatic. We can't go too big too fast. And even in larger companies, in my role with Alcoa, we were leading some of this kind of digital transformation across the global operations. And even within a large company, we had smaller, a lot of business units and locations that were run more like a small business. They were acquisitions or they were, and so we dealt with that. Like, you can't go in and rip and replace, and you can't go in and expect that they're going to make major capital investments. And you've got to figure out ways to overlay technology on top of the investment they've already made. And especially for small businesses who are just worried about how they make payroll every month. So how do you be an asset to them? I think it's, making it accessible, making it affordable, not going so big that you intimidate them and scare them off. And starting with small wins, like how do you take a small problem on their plant floor and help them to quickly show how technology could help. And I think also, how do you get them plugged into some of these superstars? Because that is still the backbone of our economy, certainly here. When we did our market research on where we sit, there's over 5,000 manufacturing companies within a 30-mile radius of us, and over 98% of those are classified as small businesses. So we cannot ignore that they have talent needs, that they have technology needs, and how do we make it accessible and less intimidating for them? And that's something that we're really trying to focus on. And I know everybody's starting to talk more and more about the SMEs or SMMs, those small to medium enterprises or manufacturers. But I think that for this to really make an impact, we can't miss that enormous portion of our manufacturing ecosystem and supply chain.
I think quickly, I'd just like to echo really what Sherry is saying. So we can talk about a membership, how we work next week, Jeff, just conscious of time. But every year we carry out around 500 non-member engagements across the region and kind of further afield, of which 400 of those are for SMEs. So we kind of pride ourselves, and it can be very easy to get stuck into the trap, as Sherry was saying, around talking about the big players. Right? These are who we work with. But if the smaller players, we don't help them as well, the whole thing's going to collapse.
That's right.
So you've seen it, Jeff. You've had a war in our facility. We have kind of sandbox areas where we say 5-day assist, no cost, come in, play with the technology, get hands-on, understand it. A lot of it's culture, especially for the smaller companies. It's not scary. It doesn't have to be expensive. Become familiar with it, and then we can help link you up with the integrators, the suppliers, and the larger supply chain as well.
Yeah, it's well said. Sherry and I had another conversation talking about kind of the Mid-Atlantic region. My very first 3 weeks with Canary 7 years ago, I visited 2 towns in the same day. I went to Towanda, Pennsylvania, which used to be a booming economy of oil and gas and small manufacturing that is completely shuttered, aside from 1 or 2 facilities that are still operating, but you can feel it, right? Like, we've all been in those small towns where you knew they once had a thriving business, a cute downtown, right? And it's just broken glass and plywood. And then 2 hour and a half away, maybe, I'm in Corning, New York, same day, which is the home of Corning, glass. And 130 years ago, 140 years ago, defined that area and has now advanced to making some of the most high-tech jobs in training and healthcare and all of it's the place you want to go for a weekend and spend time, even though you have nothing to do with glass manufacturing because of the residual. So how do we prop up those small and medium manufacturers and give them the opportunity to do great things? That is for all of our individual onshoring benefits. We're starting to see the benefit of making sure those jobs stay local. If not, we didn't know about it 2 years ago. We certainly know about it now, don't we? Michael, Pierre, any closing thoughts as we look towards next week?
Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, really appreciate the dialogue today and can't wait for next week.
Yeah, it's been great. And I love the fact that Pierre and Michael came with jokes. Alan, we're flipping.
No. Look, I've got jokes.
Well, here you go, Jeff. We started with introductions today. So to end the call, how did the hamburger introduce his wife?
I don't know.
Meet Patty.
Meet Patty. Sherry with the win.
I'm not even a dad.
We would call that a faux pas.
Last night, I grilled chicken for 2 hours. Still couldn't get it to talk.
Could not get it to talk. I love it. Alex, do you have like some super dry British humor you can throw at us?
I'm leaving. I'm done.
Yeah. And with that, I think we should wrap up episode 1 of our back-to-back double rundown edition. Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you to our audience. And as always, we hope we're offering valuable content and that we're adding a great level of service to the awesome job that you're trying to do each day. Everybody, thank you so much and have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.